Hey, thanks for watching again. What's this video about? This video is about learning the 12 dominant 7 scales. Now, if you've made it to this video and for some reason you have not yet learned all of your 12 major scales, I'm going to ask that you go back to my previous videos and watch those videos about learning the major scales before you move on to learning these dominant 7 scales. Okay, so dominant 7 scales. What is a dominant 7 scale? Well, a dominant 7 scale is two things, the way I think about it. One thing, it's a major scale that has a flat 7 instead of a major 7. In other words, let's take the key of C, for example. A C major scale has the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B natural, and C. If we wanted to turn that C major scale into a C dominant 7 scale, the only thing we would have to do is flat the 7 by 1/2 step. So, after we do that, our scale would look like this: C, D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C. Here's the difference in the sound of those scales. I'm going to turn on the metronome. Always use a metronome when you're practicing. This is the C major scale. This is the C dominant 7 scale. Did you hear that? Did you hear the difference? That second scale, the second to last note, may have sounded a little unusual. Maybe you've never heard that before. Maybe you're not used to that. That's a dominant 7 scale. The second thing that a dominant 7 scale is, at least the way I think about it, the second thing that it is it is the 5th mode of a major 7 scale. What do I mean by that? There's this idea called modes, M-O-D-E-S, modes. And with this idea, every major scale has 7 modes. In other words, there are 7 subscales that you can create out of the main major scale. So you have a scale that starts on the 1, that's the major scale. You have a scale that starts on the 2. You have a scale that starts on the 3. You have a scale that starts on the 4. And this is where we get our dominant 7 scale from, the scale that starts on the 5. So that was a G dominant 7 scale. So another way that you can think about this is that every dominant 7 scale is the 5th mode of its major scale that it comes from. So G, the one I just played, the G dominant 7, is the 5th mode of the C major scale. C, D, E, F, G. It's going to give you your 5th mode. Another name for this dominant 7 scale is the Mixolydian scale. Mixolydian. Just in case you wanted to know that. There might be some information that you could use one day. Okay, since we just had that little talk, we're playing the C dominant 7 scale. Now, if I ask you, where does the C dominant 7th scale come from? Or What major scale does the C dominant 7 scale come from? Can you figure it out? Of course you can figure it out. It's a little bit like math. You just ask yourself a question. Now, what key is C the 5 of? An easy way to do that, you can count downward in the scale or on the staff from C on down and count down 5. Use C as 1. So you have C, B flat, A, G, F. So F is the major scale that the C dominant scale comes from. Now, another way that you can find that out is if you can just remember that the 4 of every dominant scale is the key that it comes from. So we're playing the C dominant 7 scale, C, D, E, F. F is the major scale that the C dominant 7 scale comes from. Now, how are we going to practice all 12 dominant 7 scales? My recommendation is to break it down into groups of 3, just as we did when we were learning the 12 major scales. There's also 12 dominant scales. So we can use the same groupings of 3. So that would give you 4 groups of 3 scales to practice. So practice them 3 at a time to start with. So you can go in the order of B flat, E flat, A flat. That'll be your first group. Then you go D flat, G flat, B. That'll be your second group. Then you go E, A, D. That'll be your third group. And then G, C, F. That'll be your fourth and final group. So just like anything else that we practice, when we're practicing in these scales, we always want to use a metronome, and we should not move on to another scale before mastering the scale that we're playing right now. So if we're starting with the B flat dominant scale, we'll play along with the metronome. And when you're first starting out, you want to make sure that you're playing at a tempo that's not too fast, because you're learning the notes, and as you're learning the notes, you're ingraining the muscle memory into your fingers as you memorize the notes that you're playing. So you have to play slow enough that you can say the notes in your mind while you're playing them. And master it. After you've mastered the C scale, the C dominant scale, then we're going to move to the F dominant scale, let's say. See? It's simple. Now, this is not something that you have to rush and learn and try to learn everything all in one day or in 1 week or even 1 month. You can go at your own pace, because the slower and steadier you go, usually the more this stuff is ingrained in your fingers and your muscles and your DNA, to the point that you don't have to think about it. So I recommend whichever group of 3 scales you're practicing, to work on those for about 20 minutes daily, and make sure you're using the metronome. My metronome just now was set at 60 beats per minute. And remember, when you're practicing, if it doesn't sound as great or as good as you want it to sound, don't be discouraged, because it's not supposed to sound good when you're practicing. If you're practicing and you sound good, it's time to move on to some more challenging and more difficult material. After saying all that, all I have to say now is I'll see you in the next video.